Good afternoon. We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons right here in 790 KBC. Mottek On Money right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz at 5. Right now, Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Another mixed finish for stocks today, with the Dow continuing to flirt with an all-time high. Did close higher again today, but closed with no cigar and a record high. The Dow up 16 points at the bell at 44,938. The S&P 500 down 15 at 6,396, pulling back some more from the record high achieved last week. And the Nasdaq taking another tumble today, down 142 points at 21,173, as tech names continue to come under pressure, including the magnificent one, NVIDIA, down to 24 cents at 175 and change. The yield on the 10-year note now at 4.30%. Did see the big tech names pull back. We'll be taking a closer look at that coming up later this hour. And part of that tech sell-off this week has involved crypto and crypto-related equities. I'll talk about that part of the story with ELEANOR TERRETT, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. Will be joining me live later this hour. The Fed also in focus today with the release of the notes from the last big Fed meeting, showing two policymakers voted against the decision to leave rates unchanged. It appeared largely alone in that opinion. Investors eager for a sense of where policymakers stand on interest rate cuts after the latest economic reports revealed inflation perking up at the wholesale level and a bit of a weakening labor market as well. We'll be hearing from the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell at the Jackson Hole, Wyoming speech on Friday. Retailers also in focus with Target's results. The highlight today, Target eked out a profit beat and held on to its guidance. Next up, Walmart tomorrow. Also, federal officials believe inflation from new tariffs is just around the corner and that American consumers are going to pay the cost, according to some of the notes from the Fed's last big meeting in July. Meanwhile, President Trump told aides he's considering firing Lisa Cook, a Biden-appointed Federal Reserve governor, if she doesn't resign after one of his housing officials accused her of mortgage fraud, according to a senior White House official, another person familiar with the situation talking to the Wall Street Journal. Another interesting story, rental car firm Hertz has come up with a deal with Amazon Autos to sell some of its used car inventory now. The company said this will make it easier for consumers to buy cars from its fleet, and that starts today. Consumers can search Amazon Autos to browse, finance, and purchase from thousands of used Hertz fleet vehicles. Price of oil moving higher today at a bigger than expected drop in crude oil inventories. Investors await the next steps in talks to end the Ukraine war, with sanctions on Russian crude remaining in place for now. We'll talk about that and what's happening here in California with the planned closing of 2 California oil refineries. And concerned now that California will soon be paying eye-popping prices at the pump once again. I'll talk about that and more with JODIE MULLER, the new president and chief executive officer of the Western States Petroleum Association, also known as WSPA. But first, on your money, the markets and the economy, the whole works now. Joining us live, the one and only Ben Stein, author, political and financial commentator, actor too, famous for the big scene in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he gave that lecture on trade policy and one of the most famous scenes in American cinema. Ben Stein, thank you very much for coming to the line here for our occasional Frankenstein conversation, which we do as needed, and we certainly need it today.
Well, you're very kind. I think, with the greatest respect to my dear friend, namely you neglected to say I'm an economist. I was trained as an economist at Columbia and at Yale, and I worked as an economist and have been writing about economics pretty much my whole life since I was tall enough to reach a typewriter keyboard.
Economist, and I also forgot lawyer, too, attorney,
yes,
law professor
yes.
Right? Prolific author of numerous books. Wait a minute, game show host. Hang on, game show host of Wins Ben Stein's Money, and most of all, a wonderful contributor to this program for many, many years, Ben Stein. So wonderful to have you with us. And, of course, you also served as speechwriter as well in the Nixon White House at a front row, Dr. Henry Kissinger and all the big names back in those days when China and Russia were very much big news back then. So let's start with Russia and what's happening here with the Putin meeting with President Trump on Friday, and then the big meeting this week with the European leaders. Give us your thoughts here on what's happening on the world stage.
I'm not sure we can make any kind of deal with Comrade Putin. It's very hard to make a deal with a person who cannot be trusted, has a long history of violence, especially when it's completely uncalled for. And I don't know. He reminds me of a very famous quotation from the Duke of Wellington just before the Battle of Waterloo. And he said to one of his comrades, one of his fellow high-ranking generals, he said, "I don't know if they scare Napoleon, but they scare me." And I am really scared of trying to make any kind of deal with Mr. Putin or however you want to pronounce it. He has not got a shred of good character about him, and that makes for war.
Certainly, diplomacy has changed a lot since you had that connection to the White House many years ago with President Trump running the show here at this point. What do you think is going to happen here now? Are the two sides going to get together with President Trump, or what's happening? Looks like Russia's continuing its attacks on Ukraine, and we also saw the report that NATO scrambled warplanes as Russia hits near a Romanian border in Ukraine today. So we're keeping an eye on all the latest headlines as we speak.
Well, what would be the reason that we would think we could trust Putin or Russia? I mean, the Russians must be disgusted as hell with Mr. Putin. What good have they gotten out of this war? They fought World War II against Hitler because he wanted to conquer and enslave them and treated them incredibly brutally. But what on earth are they getting out of Mr. Putin's totally unwarranted, uncalled for invasion of Ukraine? Why did Mr. Putin do that? It seems to me it has to be some form of mental illness, and I hope I'm wrong about that. Why would we trust such a person?
Right. The unthinkable happened. It's hard to believe it's been this many years now since Russia did invade Ukraine, which was unthinkable really at the time, but it did happen, and thousands of people have died. President Trump urgently trying to put an end to this terrible war. Ben Stein, do you think the president will succeed in this?
I really don't. I think he might make progress here and there, but as to Mr. Putin changing his mind and saying, "I don't want war anymore, I don't want to be at war with Ukraine," I don't see it. I mean, when you read what Mr. Putin has said about this situation, what he's basically said is, we own the Ukraine. We own Kiev. We own everything there. Let's not give it back to the people who actually do own it. Let's fight and fight until we get them. And it's an amazing thing. No one would have believed that this war would be going on this long, or that the Russians would have been stopped cold over and over again. And that's thanks to American weapons and a great deal of American money. I don't see why Mr. Putin is going to want to say, "Okay, you've beaten me. I'll back off now." Where's the incentive for him in doing that?
On their live with the one and only.
Sorry, he obviously doesn't give much of a damn about human life, and there's no sign that he's changed that.
On the air live with the one and only Ben Stein here on 790 KABC. Let's turn to Israel and Hamas and that ongoing war. What are your thoughts about how that situation will finally wind down?
Hamas is a puppet of Iran. Hamas is a vicious, cruel, mad dog. And just yesterday, the head of Iran said that the war is not over, despite whatever you may read or whatever you may see in the newspapers and in the media. We're still fighting Israel. There's no end to this war, and there never will be an end until Israel is wiped off the map. Well, Israel is not going to be wiped off the map. Israel has the atom bomb. Israel has probably the most capable people per square foot of territory in the world. This is a country smaller than New Jersey, and it has repeatedly defeated the combined militaries of the Arab states, even when those Arab states were being very well armed by Russia and China and North Korea. I don't see any end to that fight. These people don't want peace. The Iranians don't, and their stooges, the what should I say, mad dogs, as I keep saying, of Hamas, don't want peace. Israel tried to make peace with Hamas. Didn't work. The attacks, October 6th or 7th, I always forget, or 8th, I always forget what day it was, were among the worst attacks against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Hamas has made no indication whatsoever that it wants to stop killing Jewish children and young people and raping Jewish girls. I don't see any reason to trust them, and I hope that Mr. Trump understands it. I think he does. I think in terms of his goodness to the children of Israel, he's the best there's ever been.
And you're right, October 7th is coming up, the second anniversary of the Hamas terror attack on Israel, which killed more than 1,000 people there in that horrific terror attack, and that's what started this war. And if you could put your economist hat on now, Ben Stein, we did get that hotter-than-expected reading on wholesale inflation recently, and that has spooked some folks to think that inflation is now going to rip through to the consumer level with tariffs front and center, and a lot of uncertainty how that's going to still play out with China especially. And now the Fed chair is going to speak on Friday. Maybe we'll get some clues as to their next move. It's widely expected the Fed will be lowering rates next month. Give us your view of all of that, please.
Well, I think I come by this honestly, sir, but however many of your fans, and there must be millions of them, tens of millions, remember the terrible inflation under Mr. Nixon, and there was a wage price controls. The Democrats in Congress insisted that Mr. Nixon put on wage price controls. He did. I'm sure you remember who was in charge of them. My dear old dad, Herbert STEIN, and they had mandatory wage price controls. It worked quite well for a few months, astonishingly well, but as anyone would have predicted, it didn't work forever, and eventually it cracked around the edges, then it cracked altogether. But by then, extremely vigorous monetary restraint by the Federal Reserve had sort of broken the back of runaway inflation, and we got a better than expected result. Will Mr. Trump have the guts to keep the monetary screws tight for all the next several years, certainly several months? I question whether he will. Milton Friedman, the greatest American economist, said inflation is everywhere, always and everywhere, a monetary phenomenon. I think we better not loosen the screws. I'd like to see them loosened. I have a lot of interest in real estate and real estate deals. I'd like to see lower mortgage rates, but I don't think that will help fight inflation. Inflation is really, really a tough beast.
All right, and then you're, of course, the Smoot-Hawley expert. It reminded me, of course, and you're not only an economist, but gave that famous lecture in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off on trade policy and tariffs. So people turn to you for some guidance going way back when, since you studied all of that, Ben Stein, and gave that lecture in that very famous movie scene. Now that we've seen how some of the tariffs have played out, what about tariffs under President Trump, and what do you expect to come out of all this?
Nothing good. I don't, as I said in that scene, the results were not great in terms of Smoot-Hawley, or Hawley-Smoot, as some people call it. It didn't stop the depression. I don't think it would stop the inflation now. I don't think there's any documented evidence of inflation being stopped by tariffs. If Mr. Trump wants to try them, I love the man and I wish him well, but I cannot find any historical precedent for the tariffs working to stop inflation. I hope and pray that I'm wrong.
Any specific places where Ben Stein is putting his money now and or taking off the table?
I'm taking it off the table. I'm an old man. I can't play games. I can't risk. I can't gamble. And I am actually liquidating a fair amount of my real estate and plan to use the money to live quietly with my friends and family. And sir, I do think inflation tends to be good to real estate, and I said inflation marches right along as the real estate marches right along with it. That's been historically true. I still like gold. Didn't always like it, but I like it more now. I'd say if I were a young person or a middle-aged person in the United States of America, I would give a lot of thought to real estate. If you're an 80-year-old like I am, maybe just take it off the table and live quietly.
As always is the case when you're on, people want to make sure that it's you that is speaking live on the air with us here on 790 KBC. And I think we've reached the point now where you need to take the role here at this point, sir.
I think so. Andrews, Adamson, Edelman, Baker, Bueller. There you are, sir. There you are, Chief. God bless you.
I think you took the day off. Ben Stein, thank you very much for that thorough assessment once again. Look forward to speaking with you again very soon. The one and only Ben Stein live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Happy National Radio Day, by the way. August 20th is National Radio Day. It's always National Radio Day here, though, on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Mixed finish for stocks today with the Dow up 16 to 44,938 as the Dow continues to flirt with an all-time high. A bit late to the party, both the S&P 500 and NASDAQ have been on a record tear in recent weeks. Pulling back today, the S&P 500 down 15 at 6,396, and the NASDAQ down 142 at 21,173. The yield on the 10-year note, which impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, as economist Ben Stein properly noted, now 4.30%. Gold up nearly $4 today at $3,392 an ounce. Taking a look at the cryptos here, so-called digital gold Bitcoin, hovering at around $114,399 here at the moment, up about $100 here as things stand at the moment. We'll be talking to our crypto expert, ELEANOR TERRETT, coming up in the next half hour. Ethereum up 4,365. XRP at $2.96. Solana at $187. And Doge at the moment at 22 cents. As reflected in that drop in the NASDAQ today, tech names continue to take a hit. It's been a rough patch for the Mag 7, not so magnificent 7, I guess we can call them now. NVIDIA, the Magnificent 1, pulling back some more from its recent all-time high, which was above $183 a share recently. Down 24 cents today at $175.40. Apple, which had a nice run-up, and now a pullback, down $4.55 at $226 and change. Tesla, down more than 5 at $323 and change. Palantir down nearly 2 at $156.01. Amazon down $4.20 at $223.81. Hertz, the rental car company, of 31 cents at $5.51. As I mentioned earlier, there was a big deal announced between Amazon and Hertz today. The rental car firm Hertz struck a deal with Amazon Autos to sell some of its used car inventory on the Amazon platform starting today already. Looks like you can search Amazon Autos to browse, finance, and buy from thousands of used cars in the Hertz fleet, including Ford's, Toyota, Chevrolet, Nissan, and others. Hertz Car Sales, the rental car firm's used car sales division, will be the first fleet dealer on Amazon Autos. Intel down $1.77 at $23.54. That company's been in the news lately with the possibility of the U.S. government taking a stake in Intel after President Trump demanded the head of the company resign because of ties to China. Oil stocks in focus today, with the price of oil moving a bit higher today, up 2% on a bigger than expected weekly drop in crude oil inventories. Of course, we're watching geopolitical developments as well, which could potentially impact the price of oil, specifically efforts to end the Ukraine war, with sanctions on Russian crude remaining in place for now. We did see Brent crude oil, the global benchmark, moving up $1.05 today to settle at $66.84 a barrel. And crude oil in New York moved up 86 cents to settle at $63.21 a barrel. We'll talk more about oil and gas coming up also in the next half hour. with the new head of WSPA. That's the Western States Petroleum Association here in California. But right now, let's get the latest news for you here on 790 KABC.
Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
Welcome to oh God, I can't even get it going. Welcome to Talkville, folks.
Where it's fun to talk about Smallville. I don't think you really know what you're doing on a television show until you do a podcast about it.
I've learned so much.
So what did we do again? I don't know. Let's rewatch it and do a podcast so we know what we did.
Talkville, the Smallville Rewatch podcast.
Let's get into it.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Welcome to NFL Flag.
Are you ready? Yeah! Are you ready? Yeah!
No matter who you are, lace up your cleats, smear on your eye black, step out on the field and chase something. Chase a goal.
Let's get it!
Chase the big time.
Get down, ladies!
Chase rings. Chase gold medals. Chase all of it. It's all up for grabs now. NFL Flag. Chase something. Visit NFLflag.com to find a league and start the chase today.
Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Nervous time at the gas pumps once again, especially here in California with the planned closing of 2 California refineries soon. Also, what's happening on the geopolitical front, which could impact oil prices, keeping people nervous. Right now, the price of crude in New York is hovering at around $63 a barrel. Joining us live now is the new President and Chief Executive Officer of the Western States Petroleum Association, also known as WSPA. Delighted to say that JODIE MULLER is with us here, succeeding the longtime WSPA President Catherine Reheis-Boyd, who was a frequent guest on this program as well. JODIE MULLER, congratulations, and thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Frank. I look forward to this conversation today and being a regular guest in the future as well.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the call today on this big week, immediately following the announcement that you have now become the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Western States Petroleum Association, a very big job. But why don't you remind us right off the bat, and as I remind our listeners, that 100 years ago, California accounted for 25% of the world's oil production. How important is the oil business here in California today?
It's incredibly important, Frank. I think everyone thinks about this industry when they pull up to the gas pump to put gasoline in their vehicle. It's a really exciting time for me to take on this new role and advocate for this oil and gas industry. And not just the industry itself, but the workers and consumers, and really to ensure that people across the West have access to safe, reliable, and affordable fuels. And that is what our industry is continuing to push for every single day. But there is a recognition that we are nearing somewhat of a tipping point. There is a potential for production shutdowns and refinery closures that are really concerning not only policymakers, but everyday consumers as they drive to the pump. I do think there's some recognition up in Sacramento that something needs to change, and I'm excited about the opportunity to be a part of that solution.
That's wonderful. We're on the air live with JODIE MULLER, the new President and Chief Executive Officer of the Western States Petroleum Association, also known as WSPA. Oil and energy industry was represented and heavily recent State of L.A. business conference organized by the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. One of the top people from Valero was there, and others discussing the importance, certainly to this area, of the oil and gas industry. And looks like one refinery is going to be shut down by the end of the year, and there's another one to the north of us, right, that's going to be shutting down next year. Tell us about the impact of this, and is there a chance that those shutdown decisions might be reversed at some point?
So those decisions really made by those two companies are a consequence of decades of bad policy in our state. Nobody wants to shut down a refinery. So the fact that these companies made that decision shows just how difficult it is to operate here in the state of California. Those two refineries that are slated for closure provide nearly 20% of California's gasoline, but they also provide over 1,000 jobs. They pay millions of dollars in taxes, and they are cornerstones of their local economies. So we continue to advocate that it is in everyone's best interest, you, me, all of your listeners, to really create an environment where refineries can continue operating.
Are there signs that lawmakers in Sacramento are becoming more friendly to the oil industry? For a while there, it seemed like all-out war with threats of a windfall profits tax, which never worked, of course, and it seemed the answer in Sacramento to high gas prices was higher taxes. Are you seeing people coming around here on trying to make energy more affordable here in California?
I'm hearing some very positive conversations and signs and comments by policymakers. We are really at a point with the legislature going back into session this week and 4 more weeks ahead of us. This is a pivotal time for the legislature and the administration to really look at whether they want to make the right decisions to determine the future of our industry and the costs that consumers will likely bear if the current policy trends continue. The administration and the legislature have really been doing great work over the last couple of months. And again, a lot of very positive conversations. They're trying to understand the challenges that this industry is facing related to gasoline supply and investor confidence in California. We as an industry have been working really closely with the CEC, which is the California Energy Commission, and that's been at the governor's direction. So he does understand that there are deep concerns about what these refinery closures and the decades of policies are leading to. So I think we're hearing some of that. And again, the next 4 weeks, there are going to be some very big decisions going on. There's actually a hearing at the Assembly right now that I was listening to before I jumped on with you. And Assembly people are asking the right questions. They're seeking data. They really want to truly understand the situation. But, it's not only these policies, it's the investor confidence that I mentioned. Because when one of these companies announced their planned closure of their refinery, their stock went up. And that shows you that there really isn't any investor confidence for an industry like ours in the state of California. And that's really unfortunate for the consumers.
And we track all of that very closely here, certainly. We're on the air live with JODIE Muller, who's the new president and chief executive officer of the Western States Petroleum Association, also known as WISPA. Any specific bills that you are keeping an eye on here? Any crazy policy proposals that could adversely impact the oil industry and raise gas prices? Anything specific that you're keeping an eye on in Sacramento?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of conversation around energy and climate policies for the next 4 weeks of the legislative session. So at the end of the day, what they decide in this 4-week period will impact the consumers, the workforce, and ultimately the state budget as well. So I think there are 6 key issues that are really critical to address, and not only for the consumers, but also to help restore that investor confidence and try and stabilize this industry to keep our member companies operating in this market to meet the demand of the consumers. So we have Cap and Trade. That is a program right now that is there's many conversations going on about this, and it's the reauthorization of that plan. We already have it in the state of California. It needs to protect consumers against leakage and be designed in a way that protects industries like ours in the transportation fuel sector. We are seeing a lot of problems with the way it was initially designed that are impacting our companies in the state as they look to compete with companies that are outside of the state. So it is time for major reform, we really want to make sure that they extend the life of the program, but don't change the program and just make simple adjustments so that we continue to have affordability as a focus and cost containment so that the industry can continue to provide the fuels to the consumers of the state of California. Another one is the oil production. Oh, go ahead.
Yep. No, go right ahead. Go for the next one.
I wanted to mention, too, just oil production, getting the oil out of the ground. There are proposals out there to allow our Central Valley here in the state of California to actually have new drill permits and could be ultimately very helpful for our supply and get that crude oil out of the ground in state so our domestic supply will help increase and get that crude oil to the Southern California and Bay Area refineries as opposed to importing it from countries that often don't have the same standards that we do, environmental standards, workplace standards, and also at times don't like us that much. So in our view, the simplest way to address some of this is to allow those permits and to codify the Kern County CEQA document that was put forward and have permits issued there and allow our domestic supply to flow.
All very important points that we'll be keeping an eye on here with concerns that gas prices could go up to $8 a gallon. That's one of the predictions we've seen based on the two refineries that are set to close, one this year and one next year. And I'm sure you're very concerned about this, as we all are. Looking forward to many more conversations with you. Thank you very much for that comprehensive update as we congratulate you on taking on the role of President and Chief Executive Officer of the Western States Petroleum Association. WISPA JODIE MULLER is with us here, succeeding the longtime WISPA President Catherine Reheis-Boyd, and we certainly thank and honor her service in that role for many, many years. JODIE MULLER, thank you very much, and look forward to speaking with you again many more times here live on the air.
Thank you so much, Frank. I do as well.
Thank you very much, and out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC.
Former U.S. Navy SEAL Sean Ryan captures real stories about sacrifice and strength.
My biggest fear wasn't death. My biggest fear was nobody will remember me.
That motivates a lot of people.
It just made me feel invincible.
Opened the steel door and just... They were all convinced, I think, that they were about to die.
This rush of stress comes over me because now it's soul time.
All of a sudden, I'm saying, what is really important?
Let us reveal the truth of ourselves.
That's it.
The Sean Ryan Show. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. It was just about a week or so ago that Bitcoin and the NASDAQ were at record highs. Both have pulled back in this tech sell-off we've seen this week involving crypto and crypto-related equities as well. And according to Crypto News, while the charts point to short-term caution, fundamentals remain highly supportive. And Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong made news today, saying he expects Bitcoin to reach $1 million per coin by 2030. Joining us live now is ELEANOR TERRETT, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, crypto expert and great contributor here. ELEANOR TERRETT, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this afternoon.
Hello, Frank. Yes, Brian Armstrong made headlines today, $1 million by 2030. Cathie Wood, though, from ARK Invest, arguably made bigger headlines, I think, with a $3.8 million price target by the decade's end. So that was notable as well.
Wow. And you're at a big conference where crypto was certainly the focus. Give us an update on the very latest discussion on crypto.
That's right. It's been a really fascinating few days out here. We're at the Four Seasons in Jackson Hole at the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium. It's put on by SALT, the investment platform backed by Anthony Scaramucci, and crypto exchange Kraken. It's essentially a who's who of crypto policy with the likes of SEC Chairman Paul Atkins, Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon, congressional crypto heavyweights. You've got Senator Tim Scott, Senator Cynthia Lummis, Rep. Brian Stile, and Rep. Angie Craig. They are all pro-crypto Congress people. Made the way out here to Wyoming for this conference specifically. We also have some Federal Reserve governors. Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman are here ahead of the Fed's annual Jackson Hole Economic Symposium, which kicks off tomorrow. Jay Powell, as you know, is set to do his yearly annual speech on Friday. Federal Reserve under the Biden administration was opposed to crypto. It actively encouraged banks and bank regulators not to engage with the industry. And as you know, that has all changed under President Trump to the point where Michelle Bowman, she's the vice chair for supervision at the Fed, said the central bank needs to embrace crypto and bring it into the financial ecosystem or risk getting left behind. And the vibe here is one of optimism and excitement. I've been having a lot of conversations with people who were here last year, and they say the difference between the two events in terms of tone could not have been more different. So it's been a really interesting few days, and the Fed event kicks off just about 10 miles down the road at the Jackson Hole Lodge. So that'll be an interesting one too. Perhaps a market moving conference, that one.
Well, you've certainly landed in the right spot. Thrilled that you're there and catching all of this and reporting all of this to us. We're speaking live with ELEANOR TERRETT, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, coming to us from the SALT conference and that big crypto-related event ahead of the the Jackson Hole, Wyoming speech, where Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will be delivering his last speech. What's expected to be his last speech as Fed Chairman this Friday. Will you be attending his speech on Friday?
Unfortunately not. No, I'll be heading back to New York tomorrow, but I'll certainly be watching on TV. But I really think it's notable that, you know, the tone change here, just in terms of the Fed. I remember last year, you know, I wasn't here in person at the blockchain symposium, but it really was sort of the theme last year, and I know this from talking to attendees, was basically trolling the Fed, right? Because last year, you know, the Fed was really so anti-crypto that it was, you know, engaging in debanking. You know, we've seen that narrative play out, you know, with not just the crypto industry, but with individuals who are getting debanked because of their, you know, political affiliations, religious affiliations. We just saw President Trump sign an executive order a couple days ago that's going to prevent that in the future. But the Federal Reserve was, you know, a big part of that. And actually, Michelle Bowman, in her speech yesterday, alluded to that. She actually, you know, she acknowledged the fact that debanking was a thing and that it took place and that the Fed had a part to play in it. So it's such a stark difference to what we saw last year. And, you know, it's not just the SEC, it's not just the agencies, it's it's the big regulators too, like the Fed. So it's been incredible to witness, and it really has spilled over into the feeling, into the vibes here. You know, all the attendees are just having. It might have something to do, honestly, with the fact that we're the Four Seasons as well. I mean, it's not a bad place to be, Frank. We're in Jackson Hole in the base of the Teton Mountains. It's beautiful, and that could have something to do with it too. But definitely an optimistic vibe here for the future of the industry. You know, I think a lot of people are acknowledging there's still some work to do, but you know, we had a great conversation this morning with Kristen Smith of the Solana Policy Institute, and she said that, you know, the industry's done a lot of growing up in the last couple of years, so she's optimistic about where it's headed.
On your line with Eleanor Terrett. Yeah, sounds like a tough day at the plant there. Sounds absolutely fantastic. What about the bullish, which has come up, and some of the crypto-related equities that have made a big splash recently with IPOs? What's the buzz on those? That's right. So you're actually seeing crypto companies taking the leap into the IPO markets. It was pretty dead for a little while. Crypto companies were, I think, the last time a crypto company went public, you know, before this wave. We obviously saw Circle go public a couple months ago. Circle is one of the stablecoin giants here in the U.S. The last really big crypto company to go public before that was Coinbase in 2021. So, you know, through the Biden administration, we really saw those companies kind of hold off on coming to the public markets. But, you know, you saw Circle, we saw Bullish, a crypto exchange, come to market the other day. An interesting little fact there that I really thought was cool was that the CEO of Bullish is actually the former president of the New York Stock Exchange, and Bullish IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange. So I made the joke on air saying, you know, who says you can't go home again, right? But these crypto companies and certainly was a bullish. It was
Right.
bullish right off the gate, right out of the gate, and it was bullish a bit today after a two-day pullback. Eleanor, I wish we had more time, but let's do this again very, very soon. We wish you all the best at the conference there in Wyoming, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, no less. Eleanor Terrett, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
Hey there, I'm Paula Pant, host of the Afford Anything podcast. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible because, let's face it, money's too important to wing it. From investing strategies to economic trends to savvy travel, lifestyle design, and beyond, we're in this journey to financial independence together. Remember, you can afford anything, just not everything. So, afford anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.